Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by the AC Airport. Plan your summer vacation now. Spirit Airlines is offering nonstop flights from Atlantic City International Airport to Boston, Atlanta, San Juan, Miami, and other exciting destinations. Visit spirit.com. Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast is with us for another edition of Football at 4, as we got a lot of stuff happening in this offseason soon. We're getting to that point where a lot of these things, it's going to be here before we know it. I can tell you that much. I was just talking today, Moshe, about we were in a little office meeting in here, and I said, the Eagles preseason game, August the 12th, is the first one, so that'll be here before we know it, and a lot will happen before then. And, I was listening before my show today, and on the national show, they're talking about how the Eagles are the favorites in the NFC East. We've hit that point where has the perception of this team changed that much, in your opinion?
I think the perception of the team has changed dramatically, and it should have. I mean, you take what the team was last year, and you add as much as the Eagles have added, far more than they've subtracted, and the fact that the NFC East generally is not a very good division, so we have to throw that in too. I think the good question is though, do they deserve to be the favorites or the preseason favorites over Dallas? Adam and I had a conversation about this on our podcast, not the one that dropped today, but last Thursday, and he believed that the Eagles have a better 53 than the Cowboys, and that might be true. The question I raised is, does it sort of matter though where you're strongest on the 53? Clearly the Eagles are strong on the offensive line, and that's a great advantage for them, and so are the Cowboys when healthy are too. But my point was, if your 53s are kind of even, but one team's best quarterback is all better than the other, and one team's best pass rusher is better than the other, that's what you wonder. If I've got 35 players that I think are better than yours out of 53, but you've got the better quarterback, pass rusher, corner, and say left tackle or right tackle, whatever it is, how does that get weighted? Because not all positions are weighted equally.
Yeah, well, I want to go back to something that you said and kind of pick your, get some thoughts on this, which is the NFC East, not all that good. Is it getting better? Is it to the point where, hey, there's no more of these, you're not going to get a 4-win team, or like, is it getting more competitive, or do you think this is still a down year with a 2-team race?
Can I answer that with a yes and a yes at the same time, though, that it's getting better, but it still is probably going to be one of the poorer divisions in the NFL?
I'm intrigued by Washington. I think they have a good roster.
Too.
I think they have a good roster, Moshe. It's all on, is the quarterback, which quarterback is he? I mean, I don't know if he throws 27 touchdowns and only has 7 picks like he did last year. Are they at least competitive? Are they 10-7? Are they 9-8? I mean, he wasn't horrible last year. He just was not big in the biggest of moments. So I'm not saying that Washington's going to win the Super Bowl, but can they be good enough to be competitive? Their problem has been the quarterback play has been so average to poor that even having a decent roster around them, which goes into your 53, they have a good 53. They just don't have the good guy at the most important spot.
I think that's the team that probably best, illustrates the conversation that I and I were having, more so than the Eagles and Cowboys. It's Washington. You can probably go through their 53, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, they actually had some really good players. I mean, their entire defense is pretty good. You got 4 guys on the starting defensive line who are probably as good as anybody, in the division, and some are as good as anybody in the league at what they do. I'm going to assume that Chase Young comes back a little humbled by last year and the injury, and is in better position. But Montez Sweat, Jared Allen, not Jared Allen, why can't I think of his name? The defensive tackle from Alabama.
Jonathan.
Either way. Yeah, Jonathan Allen, right. And then the other one, Deron Payne's really good too. I mean, they have a really good defensive line. And I think you can make an argument that collectively their secondary is probably the best in the division. They don't have 2 Pro Bowl corners like the Eagles do, but Cam Curl if people don't realize, is one of the best safeties in football. He's really, really good. And William Jackson and Kendall Fuller are good corners. And Benjamin St. Juste played for them last year. Pretty good team. So we know Antonio Gibson's a good running back. They've addressed their offensive line since the last 2 years. They've got good weapons in McLaurin and with the Jahan Dotson and Logan Thomas, they're tight end. So, they're a good role. I think you put their 53 up against Dallas and Philly, and you can probably say, yeah, you know what? It's pretty good. It's just if you get Carson Wentz, forget 2017 Carson Wentz. If you can get 2018 Carson Wentz, which is certainly not a perfect quarterback, but
even
probably
better. Even if you had the guy last year, 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions is a pretty solid year.
That's true. That's a very run-heavy offense, but you know what? Ron Rivera runs the ball a whole lot, so it'll be a run-heavy offense again. And so I think that I said that on the pod. I said, don't discount Washington, because if Carson just plays a little bit better, if things are a little different, and he gets into a good rhythm, he can win 10 games with that team, and that might be enough for the division.
Oh, and I see, and I agree. I feel like they could be a team that is, like a couple of years ago where they won the division, but you weren't all that impressed by them. They just kind of grind, because they had that really good defense a couple of years ago, and their defense wasn't what I thought they would be last year, but they certainly have the personnel to have a good defense again. It's just, hey, can the quarterback just be okay? Last year, the quarterback was more poor than okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, they went through the COVID issue where they had to, pluck a quarterback off the street.
Oh, the time we had Garrett Gilbert on the show, okay? And he was explaining what that week was like. And it was just like, you've got to be kidding me that this actually happened. He was laughing about it in hindsight. I can't believe that I was the guy that had to go through this, but this is what it was like. Literally, I get the call and they throw me a playbook, and here I am, and it gets pushed back. But the story, if anybody out there remembers, you can go find it on our YouTube channel, the conversation with Garrett Gilbert. But Garrett Gilbert played games quarterback for that team. You're right, the COVID crushed that team. And if people out there remember, they went and got Ryan Fitzpatrick, and some people thought because of that they were the best team last year.
That's correct. I raised my hand. I had picked Washington to win the division last year, going into the year, thinking that it made no sense that the defense was not good for the first half of the year. It was the same personnel. Now, maybe you figured a few things out about them. I don't know. But it's good personnel. I think when you got good players, sometimes you can get into a rut, but eventually you kind of work your way out. The second half of the season, they were much more competitive defensively, but they have zilch offensively. Not to mention they got nothing out of Curtis Samuel last year. So now he's their number 3 guy with Dotson and with McLaurin. So that if he's actually healthy, it becomes kind of like adding on another weapon that you didn't have or you didn't expect or contributed nothing to your team last year.
Yeah. On the Giant front, real quick, while we're talking about the best teams in the division, I feel like the Giants had a good draft. And again, I feel like the roster, the 53, is getting better. But are they, to you, clearly the 4th team?
So they're clearly the 4th team, unless some of the things that we didn't know about them change, right, because of the environment, the new coaching staff. If Daniel Jones stays healthy, is now protected by his first-round pick left tackle and first-round pick right tackle. I think they added a guard too, Glowinski from the Colts, who's not great, but probably better than what they had. If some of these guys come together, Kadarius Toney has a lot of talent. He may be a little whacked out or whatever, and I don't know, but when he's on the field, you can see that guy's like a Corvette when he has the ball in his hand. All right, Darius Slayton was not Slayton, the other one. Galladay with Detroit got 1,000 yards. Now, if he's in the right mindset and he's healthy and doing what he's supposed to do, pretty good. Sterling Shepard's always been a thorn in the Eagles' side when healthy, so he's a good player too. So they have enough players to be a competitive team. I think the over-under on them out of Vegas was 6.5, which is kind of, or 7.5. It was kind of crazy for a team that's been so bad so long, but they could be a better team than we think.
Well, which goes
they also could stink. So I don't know.
Well, you're right, which goes back to the comment that I originally made was I don't know that the NFC East is going to be this pushover like it's been. The Eagles last year, the reason they had one of the easier schedules in football is because that last half of the year was like, well, you have the Giants, you got Washington, the Giants again. Like, you just had games that, like, were so winnable. And I don't know that you're going to have, like, just complete pushovers from those two again. So I think this division is slowly starting to take a step in the right direction, led by what the Eagles did this offseason.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because the Eagles got killed in both of their games against Dallas, but they've clearly bridged the gap from a roster standpoint between what they are and what Dallas is, right? But then, just as you meant, so you could say, oh, well, they can maybe go 1-1, or maybe they beat Dallas twice, 2-0. But now there is the potential that the 3-1 that they got last year out of the 2 Washington wins and the Giants win, and then the 1 Giants loss, maybe it's 2-2 instead of 3-1. Who knows?
Right, because
it could be worse. I don't know.
Because what the Eagles did in the Reed era was they beat up on the NFC East, right? They just were completely dominant there, and that's what you really need to do, to kind of win that. Your division is obviously conquering the division. Now, Dallas. Now let's go to where Philly is currently. The Bradbury move kind of took over last week. That move kind of springboarded people's expectations to, they're really going for this. So if they're really going for this, let's say it's that. Do you think they're really going for this?
No. I mean, well, I don't think they started off really going for it. I think that they were doing kind of a slow
It's like
thing,
evolved
but then the trade
into
for A.J. Brown.
It's evolved into like, you know what? We're right there. Let's do this.
I think they're hedging it a little bit. I think that they are trying to become as talented as possible and see what happens this year so that if they do wind up making a move at quarterbacks next year to get somebody different, that quarterback comes into an environment where if he's good, he can maybe win some games. It's not like he's rebuilding with the team around him.
Right. So I see exactly what you're saying is, hey, we're giving you this team. See what happens, and because it all is predicated on what he makes monetarily, right?
Oh God, yeah. That was part of the discussion today. Is that if he has a good year, a pretty good year this year, Jalen Hurts, then they're going. Ordinarily, the Eagles would want to give an extension after a guy is 3 years into a contract because you don't want him to go out and have a similar or better year the next year. And then the price tag goes up by another 10 to 15 million. So they did it with Carson Wentz. People say it's a mistake. I think that 9 times out of 10, when you do it that way, you're gonna win more than you lose as far as the negotiation and the contract. It didn't work out with Carson in that regard, but that doesn't mean you stop doing it. And so that'll be fascinating to see if Jalen has a really good year. Does he get the extension? If he does, it's going to be at least $30 million, because now that's the going rate for just a good quarterback. And if he's really, really good, then you start talking like 35, 40, who knows what. And then you take a look at the team and you're like, whoa, Eagles going to have to make some moves with some of the older, more expensive guys now.
Yeah. Listen, I think we all agree this is a huge year for Jalen Hurts. It's obvious they like playing for him. I think the Eagles want him to be the guy. They've given him all the stuff around him for him to work, but have left open the door if it's a failure. One of the big questions would be, would a quarterback have wanted to step into this team at the beginning of this offseason? Probably not. Now you're in a spot where you might say a quarterback is willing to step in to this situation.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a quarterback who needs a job, you'll come to any team. But yeah, I don't know if this would have changed how Russell Wilson saw the Eagles or Deshaun Watson, the way the team is constructed now as opposed to a month and a half ago. But I think in general, the point is that you've built the core of this team up pretty well to be able to compete. And if you have a quarterback change, whether it's because of poor performance or because of injury or whatever, somebody should be able to step in there and help you win some games if that person has decent enough talent.
Yeah. So they went and got Bradbury. Anything left? Bates' name, people keep texting me. What do you know about Bates? His name keeps coming up. He doesn't want to be there. I think you guys addressed it on Inside the Birds. So what should the Eagles fans out there think about Jesse Bates? Is he is this just a blogger day that there's nothing going on, or is this something that Howie would look into?
The Bengals don't trade players. They do not trade their stars. They've never traded their stars. If you go back to Carson Palmer, the dude had to fake his own retirement just to get moved to the the Oakland Raiders.
Yep.
At the time. I mean, Adam brought up a great point in the podcast. I mean, even a struggling first rounder like why can't I think of his name? The wide receiver they picked 9th overall a few years ago from Washington. John Ross.
John Ross.
Yeah, people were like, "Hey, well, we'll give you a 5th. We'll give you a." I mean, he's not doing anything for you, especially after last year when they got Jamar Chase. They didn't trade him. I mean, they didn't take anything for him. So the Bengals are just not a team that makes a lot of trades, and they don't give in to player demands. I mean, there's very few. Again, you could say they give in to Carson Palmer, but they made him fake a retirement for a long time before they did it. Corey Dillon got his way, but that's 20 years ago now. So I wouldn't anticipate the Bengals making a move unless Jeremy Bates was willing to play some real hardball the way Palmer does. But the problem is he's not rich like Carson Palmer was. He's a guy who is not even a first rounder. So once those paychecks stop coming, it's very difficult. Palmer at least had made many, many millions of dollars at that point and could probably take the financial hit. I don't know that Jeremy Bates wants to play that game.
Right. All right. Of course, the Eagles, we got, OTAs coming up here shortly?
Shortly.
Mini camp, OTAs. Yeah. So we'll see them back out and about here at some point. They had a little event. What's going on with Andy Weidel? He had a second interview, right?
So this is really interesting. He had a second interview in Pittsburgh, and as we talked about this on Inside the Birds, this is an interesting GM search for them because it's really the head coach has a real big say in this, Mike Tomlin, as we understand it. Not every team allows their head coach, but obviously Mike Tomlin has earned that. Obviously, the decision will be made by Art Rooney II. That's the person in charge there, the owner. But Mike Tomlin has a big say, and from what I was told, the interview process, the part of it where Andy Weidel, who doesn't have a history with Mike Tomlin, they met each other and it went well and he left feeling good about the situation. But the Steelers are a very much in-house team, and they've got two guys who, in Brandon Hunt and Omar Khan, who are also in the running for the job. So what you might see is a situation where if one of those guys gets the job, maybe Andy Weidel still comes aboard in a different role, like a high executive role, because he hit it off well with Tomlin and they may want to bring him in.
Well, that would be a pretty big blow, I would imagine, for the Eagles to lose another front office member.
I mean, at this point. They're completely redoing their front office.
I was going to say, have they changed the way they're kind of allocating roles there?
Yeah, I mean, sure. When you have to replace as many people, first of all, it started off as we talked about a couple of weeks ago. At one point, Howie was looking for someone to kind of be an AGM, an assistant GM, as we were told. And he interviewed Brandon Hunt. He interviewed the guy from the Colts, Morocco Brown. I think he had wanted to talk to Rand Carthon, but it didn't happen. So that wasn't a position that they had before. So clearly Howie was looking to create a position there. He's already brought some people in from the outside to fill roles. He's got other guys he's trying to promote, other people he's trying to promote within the front office. And so whenever you have this much turnover, you're going to have just a different feel and possibly a different identity as to what you are, because you're really adding a whole lot of newness and you're creating titles. So I think it'll be kind of fascinating to see how it all works out once they announce the promotions and the changes, and then going forward what that means for the organization, because they're coming off maybe their best offseason since 2017 or 2018, and they're coming off what generally is considered two pretty good drafts, not just because of the players, but because the process was that led to getting these players seemed pretty solid. But now you're reshaping, restructuring, and redoing your front office, and we'll see if that's a good thing or not.
All right, Inside the Birds' latest podcast dropped today. You can check it out with Adam Kaplan and this man right here, Geoff Mosher. Plenty of all-season stuff, and of course, we will keep it here on Football at 4. We got our division previews will be starting here soon. We'll do that with Andrew on Thursdays leading up to training camp, so stay tuned for that. Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Geoff Mosher. All right, pal. I'll see you.
See you Wednesday, Mike.
All right, Geoff Mosher will be back on Wednesday. Adam Kaplan is in tomorrow.